Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, wherever you are in the world. It is the Because We Win live reaction show. You with myself, the senior soccer handicapper, Steve Wyss, and I'm with professional gambler, Neil Channing. Neil, how's things? It's great to have you back on.
Well, I'm delighted. I like the feeling of someone being senior to me. I feel sometimes like I'm the most senior person in gambling.
Well, last time you were on, of course, it was Super Bowl day.
It was, yeah.
We get you on for the big games, don't we, Neil? Because we're right at half time here at Anfield, near enough.
Oh, there was me thinking
Liverpool.
you were talking about Hibernian Rangers later in the Scottish FA Cup. You're talking about that little match between Liverpool and Man City, are you?
Just a small case of third against second in the table
It's a game
at
for
Anfield.
the title, obviously.
Yeah. Which colours are you cheering on here, Neil?
I've actually bet the overs, so I'm quite happy whoever scores. Really, I'll be delighted. I guess I'm probably more Man City than Liverpool in this one. Like
Yeah, I think
neither
the
of them will be my
halftime.
favourite teams.
I think the halftime whistle is just about to go. Liverpool just had a shot on target from a free kick, which was saved. I'll update you the odds. I mean, this is an interesting game. There's been loads of different takes about it. I know quite a lot of people on the unders. I also know quite a lot of people on the overs for the game. Same with the money line on Man City and Liverpool. It's one of those games in sport, and you get this in every sport, where it's generally split down the middle. Loads of different opinions. No sort of wagon team, if you know what I mean. I mean, I think Man City have been the best side in this football game so far. They've been by far the better side. They're minus 235 in running just to win on the nose, which, that's obviously pretty short. But for those who do like bet short priced and, in running accumulators or whatnot, then that could be something worth looking at. Minus 167 for over 2.5 goals, Neil. I don't know what your thoughts are on that one. I would probably at this point in time, not bad price, is it? Because there's so much time added on in Premier League games now that you're probably going to get 50 plus minutes in the second half for that.
Yeah, don't worry
Liverpool,
about that.
if you fancy.
I played over 3.25 in that Spurs game earlier. Got 2 goals in the last after the 90th minute. Perfect.
Ivan P. Well, thank you very much for calling me the legend, Ivan. Welcome to the show. I don't think we've had Ivan on one of these reaction shows yet, so welcome in. But yeah, Liverpool plus 650 if you fancy the complete turnaround here. I don't know whether they are known for being quite a good second half team this season. I think.
Yeah, not for me. That I don't fancy.
The tie's at plus 330. That would, if I actually had a free $10 bet right now, I would go with that. A tie at plus 330. It feels like I've always felt this game is going to be a draw. I don't know whether like 1-1, 2-1, but I've always felt that way. But no doubt about it. On the actual field, Manchester City have been the better team. They've actually out-cornered Liverpool 4-0. Liverpool couldn't even get a corner in that half, which is pretty remarkable.
If Man City win, what do we think the prices will be to win the title?
Ooh, there'll be Man City would certainly. I mean, they're the favourites anyway. I'd think they would go to about minus 150 maybe to win the title because their next match is Arsenal at home. So, I mean, if they win this game, I think they'd go
maybe,
1 point
maybe
clear.
shorter. I think shorter.
Maybe shorter than that.
Minus 200, maybe.
I mean, this current state of affairs, if this match ended in a Manchester City win, they go 1 point clear of Arsenal and 2 clear of Liverpool. The next fixture is Manchester City against Arsenal. If they won that, there'd be 4 clear. And that's the 4-point gap would be massive for Manchester City, who are known for finishing the season like a train. So you would actually price, if you were a bookmaker, would you then price them a lot shorter if they did win here?
I think so, yeah. I think, but it's so interesting because the difference between Man City winning and Liverpool winning here is so big. Like, Liverpool definitely go favourites for the league if they were to come back and win this one. I think, it's a really interesting one.
There's only been 6 fouls in the whole period, which is, I was initially thinking if it gets a bit spicy and it gets a bit dirty, I'd be looking at the cards in this game. And there's only been 1 card, and that was Rodri just right on the stroke of half time. The over-under for cards line is at 4.5 at plus 112. I mean, based on that, with just 6 fouls, I don't think I could really recommend the cards, to be honest, even though the whole season's perhaps at stake here for both teams in that second half. But
it's a great title race, isn't it? We haven't really had a proper three-way battle for a few years. I'm trying to think. I suppose Leicester that year was a kind of a three-way battle for a bit of the way. But am I
it doesn't happen
remembering
too
wrong?
often. Liverpool, obviously, and Manchester City had that ding dong, didn't they? Where Man City won by 1 point.
But to have a
But
genuine all three
three-way,
can win it,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's been a long time. It's good for the sport. It's good for the Premier League. You know, I was just looking yesterday with the Formula One. You know, we all know who's going to win every race there, and it puts people off viewing it. But with the Premier League, when it's that close as this, you're going to get a lot more eyes on the matches, a lot more people betting on the games. There'll be a bigger handle the more this goes on, Neil, you would think.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I mean, Formula One has just totally died as a betting sport, hasn't it? It's, for years now as well. I mean, you know, on both sides of the Atlantic, it's not a thing that people are interested in.
Not really, no. Let's say the last time you were on the show, it was the Super Bowl. What do you think of that Super Bowl, Neil? Was it a good one for you, or it went all the way to overtime, didn't it? So
yeah, I was really cheering the double overtime. I wanted both running backs to get a bit more yardage. I basically broke even on the Super Bowl. Really, it was it had its highs and lows, but it was a long old night here. Watching it in the UK, I think I got to bed about 5:30 after having a bit of a settle of my bets. It was a great game, though. Amazing, really. I saw
it was a great game.
some professional punters suggesting that you should bet the minus 1200 no overtime on the basis there's only been overtime in 2 Super Bowls in the past.
But weren't those 2 Super Bowl overtimes in recent years? I think they were, weren't they? That was for many years there wasn't a Super Bowl without one. So maybe the dynamics are changing and teams are getting a bit closer.
I guess at the end of the day, you're more likely to have overtime in a game where somebody's like a 1.2 point favorite. I think it was about they were about 1.5 point favorite in the end, San Francisco.
This wasn't in the itinerary, but give me one name to win a Super Bowl next year.
Oh, I don't.
Off the cuff of your head.
No, I don't. I don't know. I wouldn't have a clue. I just there's so many things can change between now and then. I mean, the worst thing you can do is probably to bet, you know, the winner. But you know, the thing about American football, NFL, is the teams equalise. You know, you got the draft and the schedule means that the best teams have it the hardest. So it should be difficult for them to win Kansas again. But they do seem to be building a bit of a dynasty.
Have you ever been much of an anti-post bettor down the years yourself? In any sport,
NFL wise. I mean, I was thinking about that because you said to me you were going to ask me some of my bigger wins. One of my biggest ever wins was NFL. I'm trying to remember the exact year. I'm sure the viewers will know. It was the Rams. It was about 2001. The Rams won the Super Bowl. They beat Tennessee in the final. I don't know whether you remember. You're too young, Steve, but there was
the St. Louis Rams back then, I think, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And there was a thing called the longest yard. Basically, it went down to the last play of the game, and the Tennessee Titans got the ball, and the guy outstretched his arm, and he couldn't quite make the line for the touchdown to tie the game. Yeah, I basically bet the Rams. They lost their first 2 games. And they won their 3rd game, and they had a new quarterback. He was like a supermarket shelf stacker that they brought in, and they scored a lot of points in their 3rd game. And in all Super Bowls in the preceding few years, the winners had always racked up lots of points. I just thought, I like a team that I don't mind if they concede a lot of points, but if someone's going to win the Super Bowl, they've got to rack up points. And it was a weak division that they were in. And I thought, let me have a look at what price they were. And they were 80-1. So I had a little bet at 80-1, not masses. And they won to go 2-2 in week 4. So I looked again, they were 66-1. So I thought, well, they haven't cut them much. They've won 2 on the spin now, you know, and I think I'm going to back them again. So I had another bet at 66-1. They won to go 3-2. Now they were 40 to 1. Well, now as a believer, they've won 3 on the spin. I went in again at 40 to 1. Week later, most people cut them to 25s when they won the next week, but somebody stuck out at 28. I couldn't resist a bit more. I carried on backing them. The day of the Super Bowl, they were minus 225. They were a 7-point favourite, and there was a bookie in England that put the prices up just a little out of line with everyone. I mean, they made generally a 7-point favourite will be minus 300. And there was a bookie in England going minus 225. So I thought, well, I just have to back them again. So I bet them again on the day at.
So you're not a hedger then in that sort of situation. You don't hedge.
I mean, I have been known to hedge, and that's actually a perfect spot to hedge, really, because I could have played Tennessee +7 and won both ways. But I just the way the prices were framed over here, the bookies over here were just kind of slightly leaning towards Tennessee, and I don't know. I mean, I think you should hedge in long-term situations. You should hedge if you think the new price is wrong. Treat all betting opportunities as a new opportunity. Don't make a decision dependent on what bets you've had already. And the second thing is if you think it's an amount of money that's going to either be a huge amount that can change your life, that you won't get that opportunity more than a few times in your whole life, or if it's if the price is completely wrong, if you feel like they've made a mistake on the prices. Those are the only times I would really hedge, and I didn't. I felt like they were making a mistake on the prices, and the mistake was the other way. So I pressed up. The money was pretty big, but I guess I was playing quite big at the time. So
it's
yeah,
very
it was
interesting that.
no,
Yeah,
that's one of my biggest ever wins. But it's not many people when you speak to gamblers, when they see a big price one, they normally have quite small bets on it because they think, well, it hasn't got much chance. I've always been the other way. If I like something at a big price, I tend to kind of have a bit more on, really, because I just think that you don't get many shots at. There's not many 80 to 1 chances that you see that you really think can win, or 50 to 1 when I pressed up, or 40 to 1. And I think sometimes you have to really have a go.
it's about timing with anti-post long-term betting. I mean, Leicester City spring to mind in the Premier League, of course. There was.
That was an amazing betting story,
Did you
wasn't
get
it?
on them at any point that
I
year?
did not get on them, mostly because I wasn't really following the football that much that season. I did look a few times because I do think there's a tendency on those things for them to be slightly mispriced. The narrative was generally, well, they just can't keep doing it. I mean, at Christmas, I can't remember, were they 4 points clear at Christmas and they were still 33 to 1?
They were
Generally,
generally a big price until about, I think, February, and that's when they
yeah.
came down to like 10s and 12s, and
Exactly. There
then
was a period between Christmas and February that year. And just to remind viewers that can't remember about Leicester City were 500 to 1. They had a 0.2% chance, according to the bookies, to win the Premier League. And, they'd never won it before. Leicester's a small town in the Midlands. Historically, they hadn't had a lot of money behind them. They had a new investor that had bought the club, a Thai businessman. They did spend some money on players, but they just had a phenomenal start, and everybody just assumed that they'd been lucky up until then, and it was all going to equal out, and the big teams would come through and swamp them late. And yeah, I think October, November, you could still get 100 to 1 to win the league. They were 33 to 1 around Christmas time. You could still get 10 to 1 in February, I think. And then they went favourite maybe in March. Um, I think there was a time when they were about 5 to 1, and I thought, you know what, I don't think they're going to catch them. But I didn't have a bet. I guess I slightly was thinking, oh God, I was half thinking that when they were 20 to 1.
You go back to 2001 there, and you say you were quite a big player around that time. What age did you get into? Did you kind of become a professional gambler, would you say, Neil? And what's your sort of initial story about getting into it?
Yeah, I I never really became anything else. I went to uni after school, and I sort of split my time quite evenly between very heavy drinking and very heavy gambling, and it was a real tough kind of, it was like a fork in the road. I had to decide which one I was going to take more seriously, and eventually I kind of went for the gambling more. I think there was more of a future in it than the big drinking. Um, and when I left uni, or by the time I got to the third year, I was going to the racetrack pretty much 5 days a week, and they wanted to kick me out of uni, and I just about finished the course, and I, I I I got my degree, and I never showed any interest in getting a job. I just started going to the track every day. I met a lot of bookies. I started working with some bookies at the track. Uh, I started to take a few bets from people. It's all pretty illegal, I guess, but it's all fairly low level. And I just used to hang around at the horses a lot, and I enjoyed that. I used to go to snooker tournaments. Snooker's a big betting sport in the UK, and I like to go there. There wasn't too many big golf tournaments in the UK, but there were two or three. I would always go to those. And yeah, darts as well. I used to go to a couple of darts tournaments a year. Anything where there were bookies there that you could bet on stuff. And I kind of did that for about 8 years. I didn't, I left university without a huge amount of money, and I managed to keep myself alive and having fun and traveling around and doing lots of gambling. I wasn't really making a lot of money. I was just surviving and having a great time. And then I kind of ran out of money when I was about 28. And I said to my parents, "Oh, I'm going to have to come and move back in with you." I don't think they thought that was a great idea. I think they were kind of glad to get rid of me the first time round. But I, my dad said, "Well, you can move in, but you have to get a job." So I got a job working for a bookie at the Greyhound track, and I don't think that was the kind of job he really had in mind. I think he thought I was going to get some kind of career. Anyway, shortly after that, I applied to work for a bookie. They had a new kind of betting in the UK at the time called spread betting. They have had a version of it in America. It used to be called action points in America, but it never really took off as a thing. And in fact, it doesn't hardly function in the UK anymore. But I worked for a small company, and we were pretty much the first people to start doing spread betting, and all of our customers were like city guys, all bankers and financiers and whatever, and they like to bet on the number of runs and cricket matches, uh, and we started to introduce new things. So we were when I started working there, we were already betting on the number of corners in soccer games, and you could bet under over, and we would change it along the way. Depending on how many there had been so far. And I introduced a new thing to bet on bookings in the game. I came up with a bookings index, which was you got 10 points for a booking and 25 for a red. And we priced it up under over. We just had a guess, really. We didn't have a clue. I didn't even know. I think we did it for half a season before we realised that the referee was probably the most important factor. We were thinking for the first kind of 8 games that we did it, that the teams was the most important factor, and if it was like a big rivalry. But actually, it turned out the referee was way more important. And
it's going to be a penalty in the Liverpool game.
Oh wow!
It's a penalty. It's a clear pen. Edison's given it away, the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
For so this is one that you will obviously want converted, Neil.
Well, I said to you, I'm happy with a goal from either side, so I'm not going to complain if they do this.
And a yellow card as well for the goalkeeper.
What do we think? Hit or miss? It's about.
Well, I need to see who's taking the penalty first. If Darwin Núñez is on the penalty, Núñez is the one who's won the penalty, by the way. Then I wouldn't trust Núñez to hit the target. But
it's about 76% hit, 24% miss in the Premier.
Yeah, 0.76 xG. It is, yeah. Go. So, and that you see a lot of people, you betting in soccer. If someone misses a penalty, you go to Twitter, or X as it's known now, and people moaning about players missing penalties. you do have to remember that 24% of the time you would expect them to miss. It's kind of
Yeah,
a ridiculous stat,
which is
really.
not small, is it? Really,
It's a sizable number, isn't it? Even
yeah.
Lionel Messi in his career, I think Messi was about 80% hit rate. So only even Messi was only just above it. Phenomenal, really, with considering the amount of penalties he's actually taken in his career.
And it's funny because with soccer's really changed over the years. Lots of things have changed. There's more goals in the game these days. The quality of the players has changed. But that number on penalties just seems to stay the same every season, doesn't it? It hasn't really changed for 10 years.
I've noticed actually in the second half of the season that I think goalkeepers are doing a better job, and I think it's because of the data that they're getting now compared to back in the day. You might do your homework as such written notes, but now they've got
You
so
mean
much
they can make a
analytical.
better guess as to which way to jump?
Yeah, I think there's as the season goes on, maybe penalty takers have a similar sort of trend.
Yeah.
Obviously there's some that mix it up, but there was one yesterday I was watching. I can't remember what game it was now. It was Montpellier against someone on Friday night against Nice, and their penalty taker. They showed you the graphic, and I think something like 9 of his 10 penalties had all been in the top left corner of the net. So I was thinking, bloody hell, how's that been allowed to happen?
Sure.
Surely the goalkeepers know this. Now, as it happens, he actually mixed it up and went the other way on Friday night. But there's tendencies and there's a lot more data, and not just about penalty takers and all that, but also which way goalkeepers move.
Yeah.
So the penalty taker have got that in their favour as well. But yeah, 76%. Edison, I don't know. I don't think he has a great save ratio for penalties. I might check it up. But Alexis McAllister, the World Cup winner with Argentina, is over this penalty kick. This is a massive moment, Neil, in the title race.
Huge. The whole season really can be pivoting on this.
He has scored 9 out of 10 penalties in his career, apparently, according to the graphic that just came up on the screen. He goes now, and he's just about to step up for the kick. This is a massive moment in the game. Might be the best chance that Liverpool get in this match. Yeah. He really needs to score for his team here. And he runs up. And he has scored. It is in the back of it. It's Liverpool 1, Manchester City 1. Anyone on both teams scoring? Yes. And McAllister anytime has cashed in there. And that's good news for you on the over, Neil. Not so good news for Nigel Seeley, who's on the under in this game, under 3 Asian goals.
Oh God, I didn't know that. I didn't want to say over if I'd have known the governor had gone under. Dear, I don't want to get the sack. I've only been on the programme twice.
I said before the game, it was genuinely 50-50 split down the middle sort of game. And that kind of shows it there. We've got you on. Obviously, you've got a history with Nigel Seeley, the boss. Where does that come from? Tell us something interesting about Nigel Seeley.
Yeah, so I was working for City Index, who were they were kind of the sort of founding firm of spread betting, and I don't know, they somehow I moved to one of their rivals, IG Index, which was a slightly bigger firm, and they took over another firm as well, so they sort of doubled in size quite shortly after I moved there, and there were a whole bunch of young guys there. It was pretty much all guys watching soccer games, watching horse races, watching tennis, watching NFL, and studying data. And the internet had come in by then, so it was all getting a lot more interesting. There was a lot less writing things on the back of a cigarette packet, and a lot more trying to actually use numbers and data. And this fella Nigel Seeley was there. He seemed to be quite knowledgeable about tennis. I thought I used to follow him on his tennis quite a lot, and he didn't know too much about the horse racing. I was doing the horse racing quite a bit, and I was doing some NFL, and he was quite interested in what I was doing. I was quite interested in what he was doing, but he was always great fun. But I do remember I was because you were asking about big wins and losses before. I mean, this was possibly one of the worst bets I ever had, but I did win £10,000 on it. And I look back now. Sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking, "What on earth was I doing?" Nigel knew this big bookmaker, and this guy who was sponsoring a big darts tournament on TV. and he had offered 100,000 if one of the darts players did a 9-dart finish. Now, this would have been about 20 years ago. So in darts, if people at home are not such big darts fans, you go from 501 down, and the minimum number of darts you can do that in is 9. And I don't know, probably 20 years ago, it had only been done 2 or 3 times on TV. It was a really unusual event. And he was offering this 100 grand, this bookie, if somebody did it live on TV. And he said, "Oh, I'm looking to get some insurance." And he asked Nigel, do you know where I might be able to get some insurance against it happening? And Nigel asked me what price I thought it was to happen. And I was kind of aware that it only happened sort of 3 times in the previous kind of 15 years or something. So I said about 14 to 1. I thought it was probably more like a sort of 3% chance or something. And the guy said he'd have 10 grand on. Um, And I was doing pretty well at the time. It wasn't long after that Super Bowl, really. So I said, "Yeah, sure, he can have that. Tell him he's got that. He can do that with me." So he was risking 10,000. I was risking £140,000, which was probably $200,000 in those days. And well, now, I mean, you watch darts now, Steve. They do these 9-darters. It's like every week, isn't it? Somebody does one. It's the easiest thing ever. I mean, God knows what I was doing laying 14 to 1. I guess I never really. I mean, I don't know. The standards probably changed massively. I feel like Nigel kind of should have warned me. He probably knew more about darts than me. You know, I did get the money, so who's to know who
The
was
bloke
wrong?
giving the 100,000 if it happened, it was eventually cheering for it to happen. If he
Yeah,
was
I
on
know.
10
Well, it would
grand
have
with
been good
you,
for his business as well because it would have looked really generous. He could have handed over the comedy check with a big smile on his face, couldn't he? It would have been great. But yeah, that was
what
terrifying. Actually, I was much more scared about that than I was about that Super Bowl.
what would you say? So a couple of things here, Neil. What would you say sort of was your lowest point of your professional gambling life? And
I had a few of
without
them.
giving sort of a figure away, what is the sort of the biggest bet you've ever lost?
Well, I can remember one. I don't know whether it was the biggest bet I've ever lost. I may have lost bigger, but I'll have to think about that. I remember when Man United were going for the treble. So when would that have been? About
99,
when was it
1999.
99? I was going to say 2000 and something. Yeah, you're probably right, 99. And I got invited to a very fancy party on the night of the Champions League final, and it was thrown by a multi-millionaire. There was hundreds of people at this party. I'd never seen anything like at the party. He'd taken over one of the most. He took over Berkeley Square in London, and he put a marquee on it. There were models all over the place, super fancy food, champagne, cocktails. There was a magician, a juggler. It was a crazy party. Um, but the Champions League final was on, and half the people in the party just wanted to see what happened in the Champions League final. Man United were going for the treble, and I'd been taking bets on that kind of thing pretty much for the whole season, and I was constantly betting against Man United, and as long as they didn't win the treble, I was going to be okay. Um, and I don't know whether you obviously remember what happened. They were losing with about 5 minutes to go, and they equalised, and then Teddy Sheringham scored the winning goal in, I don't know, about the 123rd minute of the game. What was it? The 94th minute, maybe?
It
I
was a
can't really
late. They scored
remember
2 goals in stoppage time, didn't they? I mean,
exactly. And yeah, I think I lost 48,000 that night, and about 7 years later, I started to play Teddy Sheringham at poker quite regularly after he retired from football. That's maybe 10 years later. And I got to know him a little bit. He's quite a nice guy, actually. I quite like him. He's a funny guy. Um, and I told him about it once, and he laughed in my face. And he said, "Oh, good. I'm glad you lost." I hadn't actually thought about it for years until we started talking about it that day. But yeah, that would have been one of my bigger losses.
That would be
I
about
was
100 grand. That in this today's money, that'd be nearly 100 grand, wouldn't it? Like if we
more, I should think. Yeah,
more,
probably.
yeah,
I mean, it was quite a long
yeah.
time ago. Yeah, it was pretty
So
painful. Yeah, with 2 minutes to go, I just needed them to not score twice. You'd think that was pretty easy, wouldn't
how
you?
do you come back from sort of a bad loss or a
Well, I
really
mean,
bad period?
obviously I didn't like bet my whole
Mm.
bankroll. I mean, I just carried on the next day the same as it was a normal
That's
day,
where it's
really.
important to have a good sort of bank betting balance management.
I'd probably bet bigger than I should have done on it, but I didn't bet. I was playing pretty big at the time, so it was. I mean, and most days I was having 2, 3, 4 grand swings, but yeah, 50 on something like that where it was kind of last minute. That was pretty painful. Around that time, I was working as a bookie at the racetrack, so as well as doing the spread betting, I was kind of doing the bookie stuff as a sideline. I remember going to the States once, and around that time, and the customs guy, I was going to Vegas, funnily enough, and he said, what are you coming to Vegas for?" And I said, "Well, what do you think? I'm gonna like gamble and drink and stuff. Like, why? What other reason is there really?" And well, you'd probably think of a couple of others,
Play a bit
but
of golf.
largely speaking, gambling is like one of the main reasons people would go there. And he said, "What do you do for a living?" Well, I just thought it was quite a reasonable thing to tell him what I did for a living. So I said I was a bookie. It feels like in America, I might as well have said, I was a drug dealer or something like that. I think at the time there was definitely a feeling that if you were a bookie, you were linked to organized crime.
Wow.
I had to go off into the other office for further questions.
Oh
Um,
my gosh.
the next time I went to Vegas, I told them I was an author. I think they already had it on their computer that I was a bookie.
That's a funny. I mean,
Probably,
you talked there with Teddy Sheringham about the poker. Now
yes.
you are obviously quite well known for you. We talked about this on the last time you were on the show briefly. You're known for your poker career as well, and you've had some really big wins. I mean, am I right in saying that you once won a pot? Was it £1 million or $1 million? I mean, what does it feel like when you're in contention for the really big prize in a big poker tournament?
Well, I had a bit of a sort of a downswing in my racecourse bookie career came to an end. That went a bit wrong towards the end, and the whole business of racecourse bookies kind of went a bit bad because of the internet. Really, much less people started going to the races, and it all went a bit wrong for people doing that game. And I was very involved in all sorts of things at the time. For some reason, I thought I could decide where the Nasdaq was going better than people that do that for a living, and it turns out I couldn't. So who knew? I lost quite a lot of money on the stock market in the early noughties, and I was kind of hemorrhaging money left and right. I lent money to a lot of people that didn't seem to think it was important to pay me back, and suddenly I was struggling a bit, and I sort of got to about 2005, and I thought I'd have a little bit of a change of career. So I hadn't really played that much poker in the previous couple of years, but I'd always been going to Vegas since about '93, and I played poker in London whenever you could. But there wasn't in the '90s. There wasn't much poker in London, and then suddenly in '99 it came on TV in the UK. Uh, and anybody that knows about poker will remember that in 2003 a fella won the world championship of poker called Chris Moneymaker, and it caused a boom in poker, and online poker was coming in, and America started showing poker on television every night, and suddenly it became like a massively big craze. Really, everyone was really into poker, and because I'd been playing it for sort of 15 years at that time, I felt like I had a big head start on people. So I thought, well, I need to build up my bankroll again. I'm going to give poker a bit of a go. And over the next 2 years, I kind of went from being a bit skint to having a reasonable six-figure bankroll again. And I entered a poker tour. I was playing a few tournaments by that time. I was mostly playing cash games. And I entered a tournament which cost €3,000 to enter. So that in those days, that would have been about $4,000 or something. There were 667 people in the tournament. And I won it. Yeah, I won it, and I got €803,000, which would have been just over $1 million, really. But the even better part of it was that so there were 667 people in the tournament. I felt like I was, I don't know, if you were putting rankings on everyone, I would have been somewhere between 30th and 50th probably in the quality of the field. And we got to the end of the first day, and there were only 200 people left. And out of the sort of 30 people that were better than me, probably half a dozen of them had got knocked out. Plus, I had above average number of chips. And I saw that one of the bookies in the UK had me at 100-1 to win the tournament. So I had 500 quid on myself at 100-1. And when they presented me, they were sponsoring the tournament, this bookie. So they presented me with the winner's check, which was a big comedy check. And they said, "How do you feel?" I said, "What? I don't. You probably don't know, but when you get back to the office, you should have a look at the bets you've laid on this tournament, because that feels almost as good as winning it, really." I think it might have been, from a betting point of view, I think that was my most satisfying win, really, and probably my biggest, I think.
Did it motivate you to win it even more? Insulting odds of 100-1.
Well, they laid it. They made, with 6 people left, we stopped, and it was the final the next day, and they made me 10-11.
Wow.
And quite a prominent professional gambler that I know said to me, "How are you feeling?" And I said, "Well, I'm feeling really good about it. Yeah, I've got more than half the chips. So I'm playing really well, and there's 1 or 2 people out of the 6 that are not really very good. And I think I'm probably about 60% to win it." And I was minus $1.10 with the bookies, and he had an almighty bet on me. He said, "I don't want to put any pressure on you. I won't tell you how much it is." And then he told me afterwards. It was a pretty big bet.
I mean, what was the sort of the price breakdown for the final 6 then? I mean, 800 grand for you.
I think the guy that came second got just over €500,000. He got about 520 or something like that. And then I think sixth was around about 80 or 90.
So you knew you were getting some sort of decent payout, whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't. It wasn't like winner takes all or anything.
Yeah,
I've had a few poker tournaments. Like every year they have the World Series of Poker in Las Vegas, which is a series of tournaments. I mean, it seems to go on forever these days. They're really milking.
Do you still enter that?
They can get. I haven't been for about 6 years, but since before COVID, really. But it's started to get too long. I first went to it in 1997, and it used to go on for 4.5 weeks. It goes on for nearly 9 weeks now. I mean, it's quite a long period out of your life if you go every year to stay in Vegas, especially it's in like July and stuff when it's 100 degrees there. It's not massively pleasant.
That's a lot. That is a lot, actually.
And a lot of the tournaments have kind of 5,000 people. So people sort of say it's the World Series of queuing now. You spend your whole time like queuing to buy in for stuff and queuing to collect your money if you win something, and queuing for food and queuing for drinks. It's a bit ridiculous, but I've had some. You get a bracelet if you win one of the tournaments, and it used to be a really big deal to get a bracelet, but people seem to get them, all the time these days. They had about 90 events last year, but I have come second in a couple of those, and the swings there can be quite big. I think one of them I got. I'd have to look it up now. I've long since spent the money, but it was about 400,000, and the winner got 600,000. So we were playing for the two of us playing for a couple of 100,000. We played for 7 hours, just the two of us. and he finally got me and didn't shake my hand. That was a bit weird. I held my hand out to shake hands, and he blanked me, which I thought
Wow,
was a bit harsh, really. But
that is
yes,
harsh.
there has
Yeah,
been quite a lot of poker along the way. I don't know. I still play quite a bit, but not as
but you're
much as I
not to the
used
same
to.
extent you were used to.
Not
We've got
really. No.
got 22 minutes left of the match at Anfield, and it is 1-1. No more goals since that
I suppose
equaliser.
1-1 is possibly the most interesting result in terms of the
The
outright betting on
race,
the league, isn't it? Really,
yeah, because
because it leaves all three possibilities really open. I mean, Man City will definitely be the favourite if this is a draw, uh, but they won't
it's
be
one
on
of
top.
those where if it's a draw, then I mean the destiny would be in the hands of Man. If Man City won all their remaining games, they'd be the
Mm,
champion. I
yeah,
think,
absolutely.
based on this. If I just have a look at the table now, we've got. Actually, no, it wouldn't be in their hands. It would actually be well, it'd be in Liverpool or Arsenal's hands. If Arsenal won all their remaining games, they'd be champion. Well, actually, no, there's goal difference to consider as well. That's why it's really close this year, Neil, because of the goal difference situation. There's only 11 goals in it at the moment between all three, and that can because anyone can thrash anyone now on the
It's so
day.
ridiculously wide open, isn't it? It's
It
so
really is wide
weird.
open. 1-1 would
By the
be
way, as
interesting.
we speak, I'm getting stuck into. I forgot you. I was busy chatting away to you. I forgot to bet the overs in the Juve Atalanta game.
Yeah,
So
I know you've got your eye on a Scottish game as
I
well
have, yes. Well,
today,
I don't.
Neil. Tell us a
I
bit
wouldn't
about
say
that.
I wouldn't say I bet on Scottish football every week, but uh, Hibs are playing against Rangers. It's the Scottish FA Cup. Uh, Hibs are pretty average. They have they failed to score in 6 of their last 13 games home. And they lost 3-0 to Rangers in that time. It is only the FA Cup, so there's a chance that Rangers rest some players. But I don't think they'll do too much of that. I've had a bet on 3-0 to Rangers, and I bet Rangers on the handicap. So I don't know. I think I quite like that.
A
That
Rangers to win with a bit to spare, basically,
yeah, they're
is
they're
what you're
basically
expecting.
they're like minus 175 just straight up to win the match. If you prefer to play it that way.
Scottish Cup. Now I can get you some odds with Bet Rivers. Rangers are minus 220 on the nose with Bet Rivers. The
220,
Asian hand
220.
minus 220. The Asian handicap, you get minus one Asian at minus
Yeah,
125. So if they only win by one goal, you won't lose anything at
exactly.
all. That looks a really good shot, actually, Neil. I must say, minus 125 on Rangers, minus one Asian handicap. So that could be one to consider. There's a match right now going on in France, Lille against Rennes, and it's 2-0 to Rennes. I'm pretty sure there's at least one more goal in this game. So when the goal line reaches 3.25, which
Yeah,
won't be too long now. In fact, we're bordering on backable at minus 132. I like to back goal lines closer to the sort of minus 110 mark, if I'm being honest.
yeah.
When it does get down there, I would definitely take the over because I think at very worst case scenario, we're looking at 2-1 or 3-0. But I think there's a good chance of at least one goal, possibly two. In fact, there should well be two in the second half. So if you're looking for an in running there, that's what I would go with. The Man City game, I think it's so hard, and I do like that tie. I said the tie at half time looked a good price to me, and that is now plus 116. So at this point in time, I don't think anyone really wants to lose this game if we're gun to our heads.
I still
But
fancy there might be at least one more goal in it. Right?
if there's one more, then it's going to
Mm,
go batshit mental, to
mm.
want to another word, because the other team will just have to completely attack.
Yeah, of course.
But if it's steady, obviously we're in this sort of stick or twist period for both sides, aren't we? Mo Salah's on the field now for Liverpool. Liverpool have played a lot better in the second half, no doubt about it. They've been given a real good shouting at, I think, probably by Jurgen Klopp in the interval, and they've come out a lot better. But so say 18 minutes left plus stoppage time it's all in the balance. And I just want to talk to you about general betting strategy now, Neil, because you've been on both sides of the fences. You know, you've been this professional gambler, also, you know, as a bookie. You know, it might be someone just sort of starting out in the betting world. You know, give us sort of 2-3 big bits of advice, sort of basic advice, really.
I think one of the things that helped me the most was the day that I realised that you had to have a big discrepancy between the bets that you consider to be sort of day-to-day bread and butter and the ones that you really think this is a massive mistake that they've made here and I want to play accordingly. So I used to kind of bet kind of roughly the same amount, slightly bigger if I fancied it more, slightly less if I fancied it less. But I think it's important to have quite a big difference between the amount that you bet on something you really fancy, where you really feel you've got an edge, against something where you just think it's a minor edge.
So we're talking a difference here between what they say flat level staking and sort of Kelly criterion, maybe, or
yeah, I think flat level staking is basically a mistake,
really,
because it's very unlikely that every single bet that you have, you're going to consider it to be an equally good bet to every other bet you have. Excuse me. And you know, as you gain more experience, you're going to be able to identify which ones are the better bets that you're having, and you know, if a really good bet that you consider to be one of the best bets you have that week, you're only having say twice as much on as you have on one that you just think, well, that's kind of a good bet but nothing special. It's not going to, you know, you've got to really get your money from your good strong bets. And I think a lot of people that when they're staking, they tend to, and I sort of touched on it slightly before, they tend to slightly feel if it's shorter odds, they should have more on, and if it's longer prices, they don't need to have as much on because you know they're sort of thinking, well, I want to win, I don't say $1,000 or something, and if it's 10-1, they think, well, I'll just have 100 on, and if it's evens, they might think, well, I have 1,000 on. And that's a really bad way of thinking about it. If you make the 10-1, I don't know, 6-1, and you think it should really be 6-1, but you're getting 10-1, that's a huge edge. Whereas often, especially in American sports, where you're betting minus $1.10 either side, you're not really going to have a huge edge. You're going to have a small edge every now. Obviously, of course, in the NFL, you can take good numbers and you can shop and yeah, you can find injury news quickly and stuff like that. You can get an edge on the market, but it's hard to do. But those edges are going to be 1% here, 1% there. Sometimes you see something at the bigger odds where you get a real proper big edge, and I think you should tailor your stakes accordingly.
that is so interesting because I know there's a lot of people. I've done it myself at times. There's certain days where you're staking your bets and you're working out what you're going to win should that occur, and you're basically trying to figure it out where you're going to win the same amount for every bet. Well, that's perhaps the wrong way to go about it out there. You've got to, if you believe you've got a percentage edge on, say, a plus 250 shot, then stake more. That's the advice from Neil Channing.
I'll give you another one.
Staking is perhaps the best way.
I'll give you another one while I'm at it. I think this one is particularly good for people that have any kind of emotional. In poker they call it tilt. Like the pinball machine goes on tilt if you smash it because you can't control your emotions. And in gambling, generally, there's a danger that when you lose, it throws you off kilter, and maybe you try to chase your losses, win the money back too quickly, have bets that you wouldn't have otherwise had, or bet bigger on something that you didn't intend to. And I think if you're at all susceptible to that, but even if you're not, I think it's a good policy anyway. Say I don't know, say it's a Saturday in the college football season and you wake up in the morning nice and early and there's dozens of games about to happen. I think it's a good idea to write down everything you intend to do and the stakes you intend to have on a piece of paper or on your spreadsheet or whatever in the morning before you have a bet, and to stick with that. Like a lot of people, they come into the day thinking, I'm going to bet this, 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 and this, but the first couple of things lose, so now they chicken out and they don't bet the strong one that they like later. Or maybe the first couple of things lose and they get emotionally unhinged and they bet more on something that was only intended to be a small bet when they were thinking about it in the morning. Or possibly the first couple of things win and they think, well, I've got plenty now. It's the bookie's money. I can afford to bet bigger. All of these decisions that are made on how you're doing and whether you're winning or losing are not really good decisions. Your decisions should be made on whether you think that the price you're getting represents a bigger price than it ought to be. And it shouldn't really have anything to do with how well you've been doing on the day or whether you got lucky or unlucky in the previous event. And by writing everything down in the morning that you plan to do, and then sticking to that schedule, you can avoid, if you stick to it, obviously you don't break your rule, you can avoid that emotional turbulence.
I think that's fantastic advice because, I mean, there's some people out there who are fortunate enough to have models and systems and computers are making the bet for them. The emotions taken out of it. And I know some people say it is better off to be as robotic as you can in this business, but I've always been more probably an emotional bettor compared to the robots. And there are days, or weekends or periods is probably a better way of saying it, where you just, I don't know, you feel maybe down on yourself, or your tail is so far up that then you start making wrong decisions the other way. So I think that's tremendous advice to actually sort of plan your betting in advance, either on the morning of the day or in the morning, heading into the weekend. And yeah, that was a fascinating stuff about the staking plan, Neil, because I think I've not heard too many actually say that. I've a lot more people that I've down the years have always said to me actually that level staking is generally the better way. So that's very much intrigued me, that has, Neil.
I mean, I could give you dozens more. Maybe I should save a few for next time.
Well, save a few nuggets because, yeah, it's time has flown, hasn't it? We're 53 minutes into this now, so we'll have to wrap it. We will have to wrap it up now. But there's 10 minutes to go at Anfield.
Are you on? Let me make sure you've done it. I don't want to. I'm reminding you, Rangers and Hibernian starts in 5 minutes' time. For American viewers, these two teams are in Scotland, but this is the Scottish FA Cup. It's not the Scottish Premier League. It's not the best tournament ever, but Rangers are.
I think you were being very kind there to Scottish football.
But 3-0, I bet 3-0. I don't know whether Bet Rivers have prices on it. Do they have?
They certainly will be a correct score. Do you know, on the reaction show last weekend, Simon Holden tipped up a 6-0 Arsenal win at 45
I
to 1.
heard that. I actually heard that, which is why I thought I'd better come with a correct score to give myself I can't be out trumped by Simon Holden. Imagine. I'd never be able to live with myself.
Plus 950 for 3-0 to Rangers exactly.
Well, that's not bad, is it? I mean, that's not bad
as well. That's
the last time they played, it was 3-0 to Rangers.
So that could be well worth a go. And once again, appreciate your time on the live reaction.
It's been
show.
great. The time flew by. I was thinking, well, normally I'm struggling to find anything to say. How am I going to manage? Because I'm so kind of quiet and reserved. Well, I managed to come out with some stuff.
I can't believe how time has flown so well. One last little nugget before we go from me. That goal line in the French game is over 3 now. So you actually get a push if it ends with just one more goal in it. I don't know how Lille haven't scored in this game yet, Neil. The goalkeeper, Steve Mandanda, an absolute legend of the game, actually, has been brilliant in goal for Rennes so far in the second half. At the very least, Lille should get a goal. Wouldn't surprise me if Rennes got one on the counter attack at the other end. So over 3 goals. And I know there was a question about Marseille later on. That is a really strong pick from James Eastham on our European preview show this week. He likes Marseille on the Asian handicap -1. And to be honest, based on what I've seen from Marseille recently, actually that line now on Marseille is -1.25, so they've been back down.
I'm gonna play the over in that Fiorentina Roma game later as well. If anyone wants one in Italy, I think that'll be a good over. Over 2.5 will be about a -$1.15 or something like that.
Yeah, there's been a big dynamic. We talked about this off air with the manager change at Roma, right, Neil? Since
since they got rid of the manager, 8 consecutive overs.
Yeah, I mean that's some run. They absolutely murdered Brighton on in midweek 4-0. So not a result that Tony Bloom was happy with, but
no, for sure.
The overs there. The over 2.5 goals with Bet Rivers -108. That's near enough. Close
there
to
you
even
go.
money.
That's pretty good. Yeah, very good.
It's a big price. It's a good chance for Liverpool there, actually, for McAllister with 7 minutes to go. He's appealing for a penalty. He's not going to get one. But yeah, once again, Neil Channing, thank you very much for.
I've enjoyed it. It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Steve.
It's been great both times, and we'll get some of these clips up, strategies throughout the week on Twitter and stuff. If you've been watching live, thank you very much. And if you have been watching on demand, then do leave a comment afterwards. Tell us what you think about the strategy and the ideas, and any
never read the comments. Wisdom. That's what people say. I won't look if you're going to be mean.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you very much, Neil. Loads of content to watch out for. Do give the App Because We Win Instagram channel an account. I've been specifically asked to plug this one from Nigel. There's going to be some exclusive content on there soon, along with the weekly parlays. Do check out the tennis videos from here. We've got a big tournament in Indian Wells going on at the minute over there in America. We've got UEFA Champions League and Europa League shows coming out this week. I'm recording tomorrow with Dan Roebuck, Will White, and RJ, the mighty RJ, of course. So those should be released Monday evening or afternoon even. And then more soccer preview shows later in the week before finally an international break. Things quieten down for a little bit. But thanks again for your time, Neil, and we'll see you next time you're on the Reaction Show. Goodbye, everyone. Stay safe and take care.